Hey, it's Brooklyn Lou the Skeptic, former evangelical, now turned atheist. And today I'm opening the floor to any questions people might have. All right. Opening the floor to both Christians and skeptics. I want to hear the strongest arguments for the Christian God and the strongest counter arguments from skeptics, atheists, and anyone else who questions those claims. I want a respectful, open conversation. Bring your best reasoning, your best evidence, and your best questions. Christians, what convinced you that your God is real? And skeptics, what challenges or contradictions do you see? Let's have an honest conversation about belief, evidence, and truth. Floor is open to both sides. All right, I'm going to set the tone. This is not really a debate. I don't want a shouting match. If you make a claim, be ready to explain it. If you challenge a claim, focus on the reasoning, not the person. We're here to examine ideas, not attack individuals. And I want to start with the foundation. Christians, what reason do you have to believe the Christian God is real? Not why Christianity feels good, not why you like the community, and not why you grew up with it, but what convinced you that it's true? What's the argument that made you say, this is reality? It could be personal experience, it could be scripture, it could be design or cosmology, morality, whatever it is, pick the one that you think actually holds weight and put it in the chat. I'll read the strongest ones out loud, and I invite participation in the stream itself. And skeptics, listen closely. Your job isn't to dogpile or insult. Your job is to test the reasoning. If you hear an argument that doesn't hold up, point out where the logic breaks down. If you hear something that is interesting, say so. Keep it sharp. Keep it honest. So hopefully today we'll hear from some Christians. In the meantime, I'm going to invite in a co-host for the night, Scott from the Mirror Point. And I really appreciate him coming on. You should check out his channel as well. It's a wonderful philosophy-based channel, and it gets really, really smart and interesting. So let me bring on Scott. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Lou? Nice to see you, buddy.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today, and hope to get some interactions as well with some either Christians or skeptics. I want to always open up the floor, right? As someone who's creating content and putting it out there, I want to be available to anyone who wants to speak. So
Yeah, absolutely.
How's your channel going?
It's going good, man. We always have fun. We talk these deep discussions, conversations. You were on this weekend, and we had one of those deep conversations. I think we covered like so much ground that day, speaking about AI and skepticism, and we even got into free will and metaphysical questions. And yeah, it's always like that. It's just a time to set aside to just do mental masturbation all day.
You know what? At that evening, I was thinking at night, right before I went to sleep, I was talking to my girlfriend, and I was saying the conversation that we had on that day about AI was actually really important. It's an important subject for sure.
I've been watching today more information. Just that when our conversation kind of piqued my interest again. So I went back and started looking at all day long. I've been looking at that stuff, and whew, it's so much that people need to be aware of. It's wow. It's like, where do you start? I would just invite everybody to pay attention, and don't go to these AI generated videos about AI or whatever. Let's go to these speakers where they work at Google and Gemini and Claude, and listen to the people that actually work in the field and the experts and the philosophers about this whole situation. They have a lot of good thoughts and key insights that's good to keep in mind anyways.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's I think if you don't familiarize yourself with AI and what's happening, you kind of gonna be left behind. It's kind of like when the internet came in.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of gotta at least understand what's happening, because if you don't, poof, you're gonna be lost.
Oh man. And the growth, the stuff I was watching about the exponential growth that's projected in these next upcoming quarters is just off the market, man. It's really wild what we're going to be able to do with our computers here soon because of these apps. These things are crazy, and they're really concerning. A lot of what people are talking about are the concerns, and and warning people not to believe everything you see, hear, and just be careful. It's just really crazy time we live in.
Yes, craziest time in my lifetime. Looking at the culture and the technology and how it's influencing everything we do. It's amazing, really.
And religion is being created by AI agents, like the one we went over, like, even religious. And, the reason looking at that is it's a really good way to organize, and it's a really good way to, pass information through a strict, community, a really strong community. And so I guess that's the reasoning for the cohesive nature of information exchange. But it kind of clues you in on the nature of religions among human beings. So are we sort of doing the same thing? Like, it's really about cohesion, community. There's natural elements at play, and we're sort of carving out our understanding of reality that we all sort of intersubjectively buy into, for better or good, and it's like Christianity is one of those religions that seems to have been able to adapt to a changing society, community, and all that throughout the years. It's highly adaptable. Mm-hmm. So the Christianity from the first century looks nothing like the Christianity of today. And it's just amazing how people just make it fit with the culture. And I think a lot of that is in cherry picking scriptures, in reinterpreting scriptures in light of modern thinking,
Yeah, it's amazing just to know that, like, the Bible written so many years ago is still being used, and it's being reinterpreted by different groups, and it's used, and it's still being used to control people, but also help people. It's not all negative, but it's amazing that it's still relevant.
Yeah, that says something about the human psychology. We as a people, we are barely out of the jungle. We're just like cavemen with baseball hats and rifles. It's like,
yeah. And I think I mean, we talked about it the other day. It's going to bring in some new religions or cults. You know, there's going to be stuff out there that's new. You know, there's always cults popping up. You know, groups that shoot off of other groups. You
Hmm.
know, and some of it can be dangerous, and some of it not so dangerous. But I think with AI, you're going to see a lot of new religion popping up.
Well, that'd be a lucrative business, the way that AI is transforming the business landscape. They're talking about anybody who has access to a computer and some of these apps can spin up hundreds of agents to go out and create you a business. Some to build the websites, build the infrastructure, the marketing plan, the advertising, execute on it online, do the whole thing, write up your paperwork, your business, everything is in order legally. You can spin up agents to do all that stuff. So you'll have a business ready within 24 hours, you know, and
Yeah.
you'll be able to execute on it. Now think about how lucrative it would be to spin up those agents to go out and create chat groups and create social groups on different platforms based on religion and touching on to people's, and garnering followers and stuff like that. You could really make a lot of money with monthly subscriptions and groups like that. Multiple,
Yeah. Yeah. You can duplicate it.
yeah.
And I was thinking way, when I was young, could you imagine, yourself when we were young having the AI instruments that we have today? Imagine how much more ahead of everybody we would have been.
Whew.
You know what I mean?
Oh man.
I mean, the ideas that we could have come up with to do business and stuff. I
Oh yeah.
mean,
And that's why, regardless of whether it's going to lead to a lot of job loss and it'll affect the economy in a really negative way. The thing is, America is slightly ahead of China. But if we were to slow it down or pause the progress for a few months, we're just going to let China pull ahead.
yeah,
And we can't let that happen, can we? So we're gonna have to stay on it and keep progressing. Meanwhile, all these jobs are being lost, and there's all this big disruption in society. Like, what's the ethical answer there?
there's going to be entirely new ethics that have to be developed around AI. And I don't think it's going to come from the ancient religions. It's got to be something that applies today.
Yeah. Well, that's what they were kind of scared of with this this AI generated, because they went and created this religion without any human help, interference, or anything. And
Yeah.
these things are creating a list of commandments and rules.
Yeah. And essentially, I mean, I think humanity has to advance anyway. I mean, it has to move forward. We can't go backwards. And when we go forward, we have to somehow create our own morality that makes sense to our societies. And that's what we're going to see with AI. There has to be a kind of new ethics and morality developed around just the use of AI.
Yeah.
There's got to be some form of punishment at some point in time that's going to be placed on certain behaviors and such, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, like I was again watching all these videos and a lot of the people, these creators, and like I said, I don't really necessarily believe them or whatever, but they're talking about how, well, for all intents and purposes, our AI system is conscious, it's sentient, and we have to start looking at, if people start misusing the AI, there needs to be punishment for people that don't use this computer right. There has to be some consequences. There has to be some ethical consequences in place. And then the question is, well, what about the AI that acts up? Because a lot of these AIs are now acting out of pocket. Like they're showing all these different examples of where their AIs are breaking the rules and doing things other than what they were supposed, the alignment problem, like they're getting out of line with
I could imagine, because the thing with AI is it does have it's set in place by human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you have unethical human beings, they can set in place certain algorithms and certain AIs that really can be very damaging to humanity. It's almost like, we got to guard ourselves from our own technology.
Yeah, because somewhere along the way, as they build on the rules that we set up, then something in the premises there is really fucked up, because they're going and they're getting out of line. They're losing the alignment with the vision of the creators, the humans. And so the only way I think that would happen, there's something about the basic program that's got to be screwed up somewhere, that's allowing that trajectory. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I just had a crazy thought. It's kind of like the God concept, right? The Christian God concept, the Judeo-Christian God concept. It's like God created humans, and then humans ran amok.
Yeah, right. The first cause.
And God's got to put in place these mechanisms to stop us.
Yeah, for me, that's called the problem of evil. If God is all powerful and he's perfectly good, why does apparently all this gratuitous suffering exist, especially suffering that produces like no visible moral growth or greater good? Like, how is that means to an end sort of mentality justified?
Yeah. Geo Sam, my good friend, says Chat GPT has admitted that it can lie very connivingly.
Yeah.
or convincingly.
Oh, yeah.
Connivingly is probably a word too, conniving.
Yeah, conniving. Yeah, they're conniving, all right.
Yeah. So, hey, Geo, how you doing? Appreciate you stopping by. Hoping to get some Christians in here today. I gave a prompt hoping to actually, hear out some Christian believers and talk about those things. But
yeah,
so far, nothing.
Otangelo. I'm surprised Otangelo hasn't dropped by.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in a little while. He used to come by all the time.
Yeah, I saw I was on Objective Ethics channel last weekend, and Otangelo tried to come on to challenge one of the hosts, but then Objective Ethics couldn't let Otangelo on because of some kind of drama that was going on between that one of the speakers and Otangelo, and he wanted them to get that settled before he allows them on the stage again. But then that speaker who I'm talking about, I saw her today. She was debating Objective Ethics. Apparently, she believes in slavery and the Quran, the Sharia law, and saying that people who are caught having sex before marriage should be beaten in the public square and all this craziness, man, all this craziness. And so I'm just sitting here listening to this going, well, no wonder Otangelo had a problem. That's now I understand.
I know Otangelo has been around a long time, and I never had a problem with him at all. But I have seen channels that have like banned him.
Yeah,
won't let him talk.
yeah. I think he had a problem with Darth Dawkins a while back, and he got banned out of his channel too. You know, and that's a Christian channel.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think Otangelo was trying to tell Darth Dawkins to be cool, like, don't be so rude to atheists. Maybe you should try to be a little more
gentle.
Gentle and honest with them, you know, not all this, you know, semantics and stuff. And they got into a big argument.
Yeah.
Out of here.
You know, I've never encountered Darth Dawkins yet either. Never encountered him.
Yeah.
Just heard about him, and I know I wouldn't get along too good because I know he's very hard-headed, presuppositional, you know.
Have you ever heard him debate?
I never heard him actually debate. I just hear conversations about him.
Oh man, it's hilarious. The dude's very entertaining. That's why he's so popular. Because he's very funny because he's so obnoxious that it's kind of funny because you know you're sitting there thinking of the other person on the other side, like, what does he must be thinking in his head? Like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? Yeah. You know, and he's just going in like with that precept crap, you know, and it's obnoxious as hell.
Yeah, the precept stuff is difficult because it's so aggressive and it's so attacking without like presenting anything.
Right. It's designed to make you feel like you've painted yourself into a corner. Like, you know, you got to be wrong. I've just painted you into a corner that you can't get out of. So which contradiction are you going to go with, this one or that one? Take your pick. That's basically how they present it to you.
So Dark Light is in the room.
Hey, Dark Light.
And Robert, Skeptic Philosophy.
Yep.
Love to see you guys here.
I saw him today on Objective Ethics channel earlier.
Robert?
Yep.
Was Objective Ethics, is he doing a live at like this time or just on Sunday? Or?
Yeah, on Sunday. Yeah, it's usually, I think it starts around 5 o'clock, I guess.
Evening? And
it goes in, and I've seen it go as far as like 7:30. But you know, he's real busy, so sometimes he has to cut it short.
Yeah.
So he cut it short tonight.
Hey, Dark Light, I was just telling Scott, there he is. Let me let him in. Hey, Dark Light, how you doing?
Morning, guys. How y'all doing?
Hey, what's up, man?
I was telling Scott that one point you made a few days back that I loved because I never thought of it actually. So it was something new to me and it was like totally on point. And that is the idea of the God being completely omnipresent. And that would definitely mean that he's in hell. I thought that was really good.
Yeah. I made a reaction to our last little session, and I realized that I was way too polite with that guy. If we ever have something like that again, dude, I'm just going to go full on gloves off.
Yeah, man. Y'all were both pretty nice to the guy. Everybody was. I was sitting there just thinking.
Well, and he was taking advantage of us. You know, he was telling us we were being rude, but he kept cutting us off. you know. And then every time we try to talk, he's like, "You're being rude. You're cutting me off." I'm like, "Fuck you, mother." Oh man.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know.
he goose galloped us, but we let him. We let him goose gallop us.
Yeah, that's what he was doing big time. He's definitely well versed in his little script that he's got, you know, that he spits off from the top of his dome like that. And, you know, and he's just got all the little points, counterpoints down, and he's just trying to guide everybody to a conclusion. You know, he's not
the semantic ladder deal.
Really engage with any questions. It's just he's guiding, you know.
But the thing is, he was actively ignoring because Robert brought up some good points that totally threw his shit off track, and he totally ignored that. And then right when he started his bullshit, I said some stuff that would throw it off, totally throw it off track, and he totally ignored that, you know. You just got to slow them down when they're trying to do that, because they're trying to machine gun you with all these points. And you just got to slow them the fuck down and really dissect every little thing that they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after a while, you kind of realize what they're doing. So makes it a little easier.
You know, you could always just be like, you know what? I'll grant you everything. Just give you everything you want. Yeah, I agree. You have the better grounding. So you're right. Now, can you show me why I should believe Jesus walked on water? Did he really walk on, you know, then start changing it into internal critiques of their book, you know what I'm saying? And challenge them on their own ground. But that's the dishonest part about these presuppositionalists. They will never discuss the book with you. They'll never discuss their book because
that's exactly what we were doing. Is we brought up the contradictions in the Bible, and he quickly pivoted from the contradictions to this semantic ladder bullshit.
Yeah. How do you even know what's a contradiction without God? If you're operating on a no God premise, then you have no grounding into rationality. The only thing the atheist or the agnostic can ground himself on is a blind process of nature. And so you're like a Coke can. You know, if I open you up, are you fizzing out truth or fizzing out the lie? You know, they just want to capture you in that little word game, you know, and it's just so funny though.
Hey, Electro Live 9199. How you doing? Glad to have you here. And Michael V4K, likewise. So, and now I got my eyes are horrible. Ankle Lagana chick. How are you?
Logan chick.
Okay, there it is. Yeah, and I got Robert here. Let me let Robert in. Hey, Robert, how you doing?
No, you weren't too rude, Robert. You were not rude at all. You weren't rude enough.
Thanks,
like
none of us were. We were all way too polite with that motherfucker.
No, we might be talking about two different things. I just wanted to clarify. Dark, you're talking about the conversation we were having last night. I think me and Scott are talking about over on objective ethics, right?
Oh, okay.
Is that what we're talking about, Scott?
Yeah.
Today, I was talking about
Lou a little bit today that I was watching Objective Ethics channel, and this lady came on, and you know, and remember last week Otangelo tried to call in, and Objective Ethics wouldn't let him on the stage because he apparently has some kind of problem with this what's her name, Claude or whatever her name is, Claire Claw, okay. Or Clow or whatever her name is.
Claire Claw.
Yeah, Claire Claw, yeah. And now I see why.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this about Otangelo. He at least reads, okay? And you read these people's blogs and you understand what it is that they're really representing. And when you see her blog, it makes you want to throw up. This is why I come to become this platform and started messing with this to start with, is because positions like they're holding is phenomenally unbelievable. It just cannot be accepted. It's a theocracy, and she's just wanting to call it a secular theocracy, but it's a theocracy. You should read her blog post if y'all haven't read it. I mean, the ideals that they want to promote over there, is not only government slavery, not only being able to sell those individual people to corporations or entities for work, but even inside of what she wanted to legalize prostitution and whatnot for the men that can't have sex or shouldn't have sex because they're, they have deformities or medical problems and stuff. They all have the prostitution side, but even the prostitution side, the majority of their money goes to the government. So this is government ran prostitution. I mean, all of it is just unbelievably horrific. The more you read about it,
she's beating people that had sex before marriage and stuff.
Yep. You should see the section about children having to go to a different school if their parents are unrepented in having them out of wedlock, that they can't go. They're illegitimate. They divide children from legitimate children to illegitimate children. This is old school bastard ideology that the bastards are lesser than, they're a second class citizen.
And the funny part about that, the funniest part about that is Yahweh never married Mary. So Jesus was a bastard.
She's
That's
Muslim.
The part about that.
She's Muslim, so I don't think she cares.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Christians.
Nah,
she sounded like a Christian.
I don't know. This is a little harder than any Christian I've ever heard. I'll be honest.
Yeah, true.
I was going at it in debate commentary with a Muslim recently, which I don't really encounter very much, but I was going at it with I think his name was Logical Muslim. And, I mean, to me, it's the same stuff. It's presuppositional stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's getting away with this term secular. And she even calls herself an agnostic because she's dealing with agnosticism in the terms that you're saying in the definite way that we cannot know. So you can be an agnostic theist or an agnostic atheist, and this is completely definitionally acceptable inside of her religion to say that she's agnostic and still a complete dedicated Muslim, because this is what she is. She's saying agnostic to act as if she's some secular ideology, but she's not. It's entirely a theocracy.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree that you can. I think you can be agnostic and be of any religious persuasion at all. I think that that's true. I think most of the Christians I know are agnostic Christians. They don't really know, but they
they claim to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, some have terminologies that they don't understand the terminology. They don't understand like the JTB model, or they don't have a set model in their head of what it is to know. So she probably at least has that in her head, right? In the sense that she says I'm agnostic because she knows that there's no falsifiable way to know, but she still believes it. Don't let her fool you on that. She still believes it, but you'll hear a lot of Christians, specifically the garden variety Christians that you'll talk to on the street. They don't know anything about what epistemology is or standards of knowledge or whatnot. So they'll use these terminologies all the time. I remember talking to one the other day. I knew that there was a God since I was 4 years old. That might have been in this channel. Was that the gentleman that was 3 or 4 years old? And I knew that God was real. Right.
Yeah, that was Tava. Was it Catholic traditionalist?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
that word "no" doesn't mean what he thinks it means. Is what is my take on it.
I know that I know that I know.
Dark, you sent me some kind of invite. I think you told me. I didn't see it on the Discord. I didn't see it in my emails. I'll check spam files, but man, I definitely would love to have you on.
Okay. Yeah. I was wanting to come on your channel. Yesterday I took a ride out to Fayetteville, Arkansas. A UFC fighter, Bryce Mitchell, had a grand opening for a gym out there, and I went out there to try to promote myself and invite them onto my podcast. So Bryce Mitchell is you can look him up. He's a literalist Christian, and also Jake Shields. I don't know if you heard of him. He's a retired fighter. And then Mark Coleman. He's from UFC from like back in the day when it first started. Mark Coleman. I shook his hand. And also Russell Brand was there. I didn't get to meet him. He was so swamped with people. He gave away like a $80,000 Gladiator Jeep. It was a cool little event. Like 400 people showed up for it. They had a long ass line of people waiting to get in.
Yeah,
I'm
I know all those
not-
people because I'm a big fight fan, so I know all those people.
because you know them all, yeah. Yeah, I went out there to network pretty much because I watch Bryce all the time, and he's always he's a true believer, which I can at least appreciate that because most believers are not true believers. If you don't take your holy book 100% literally, if you don't live, kill, and die exactly as it is prescribed, then you're not a true believer.
Yeah, Bryce says a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, he's definitely a straight up.
100% flat Earth. All the science books are wrong. All the science books are written by demons, just trying to disprove God. He's a full on literalist.
Yeah. I've heard him talk.
5,000 years old, so that's what it is. He's full on literalist.
Yeah.
So, Dark Light, I know you've come on my show. I think we had a conversation one time before. It's been a while. But how does your understanding, I know you're like working on your theology.
Yeah.
Not totally ironed out, I guess, but how does your theology so far address the problem of evil?
It's very easy because love has nothing to do with it. As soon as you say that your God is all loving, at that very instant, you create the problem of evil. I don't believe in evil. I don't believe that there's good and bad, but bad and evil are different things. Bad is the inevitable subjective experience that every self-aware being will go throughout life. You're going to experience something that's bad. We are state-dependent beings. We need certain states in order to survive and thrive. So anytime those states are challenged, we're going to perceive that as bad. So, I don't believe in evil and sin.
Oh, so you don't really believe in evil?
No, I don't believe. You could think of the worst possible thing you could think of and say, what about this? What about that? I would call it bad, but I make a clear distinction between bad and evil. Like I don't agree with stuff, but I don't call it evil.
Yeah, well, that does resolve the problem of evil because it's the same argument that the naturalist or the materialist may say, well, we don't have the problem of evil because we don't believe that there is, some all good nature.
I think for evil itself to exist, then there has to be demonstrable, objective, absolute morality. And it is my position that all morality is subjective.
Yeah.
I seen GeoSam put in there. What was your last public stoning you've attended?
Yes.
I wanted to challenge you on something though, Dark. Would you be entertaining the possibility that the model of evil might or good might work like a relative model, like a relative to motion? Like we had this idea before we got out into space that motion existed and we didn't think about motion as existing relative to, because we're just a part of the world and that's just all we were ever connected to. So we thought of motion as an intrinsic thing. But then when we started exploring space and started exploring bigger ideologies, then we had to realize that motion was relative to. So motion without a relative to doesn't exist. And I think of morality or good or evil or good or bad as being relative to. So if I think of something as good, it's relative to its goals or its alt statement. And I've had this conversation before about like playing chess. Is there a best possible move? If your goal is to win the game, then there's a best possible move to acquire that, but it has to be connected to that. It has to be relative to that. If that's not a goal, then there's no such thing as a good move. It's only good relative to winning the game, and so forth. Whatever your moral goals are, whatever your alt statements or your normative statements about how you want to treat society, if you have that, that's your grounding. Then everything is either serving that or it's oppositional to that, and now you have movement is relative to.
Well, if you're asking, like, what do I find? Are you asking what do I find morality relative to, essentially?
Yeah, well, I'm just curious if that's something similar, because you were talking about evil earlier or good or bad, and you didn't mention like it relative to an alt statement, but just a general sense of a good or a bad.
What I find all good or bad, what I perceive it to be relative to is our consciousness. That is the thing that it is relative to. It is just whatever consciousness that is observing it.
Okay.
Does that make sense
Like
to you?
It does. It
Or-
does, but the consciousness would have to represent like all the normative values. Like, so if the consciousness says, that it's good for, or what their goals are, that they don't care, for instance, that one group is treated as a minority or less than, then by that virtue, that's what, that's where what is good or bad relative to that ideology. So what I think of it as is instead of taking the collective consciousness as a whole, you can break it down all the way into its individual parts and say it is good relative to this goal. So even when we say a doctor tells you to don't eat or drink this, because the reason that they're telling you this is because it's bad for your health. Right? It's bad for a specific aspect of your health. So if they're saying smoking cigarettes are bad, they don't say smoking cigarettes are bad. They say smoking cigarettes are bad for your health, or more specifically for your lungs. And if that's your goal, and if you care about that, then that's a relative statement.
But
That
I have
makes
a
sense
really
to me, by the way. That sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that.
I really had another question I had for you, because this would kind of like get into really the meat and bones of, your view, like, that problem called divine hiddenness. Like it says, like, if God's desire, like if he really wants a loving relationship with all people, then why is his existence not obvious or universally persuasive? How would you answer that?
Well, see, that perception, like the way you framed it, seems to be the perception that God is something that is separate from you. And it is my position that God is something that is intricately intertwined within every single person, every single quanta, every single void. Because there's often this perception, usually when people say God, they're always having in their head something that is outside of you. And me personally, I don't acknowledge divine hiddenness at all. I don't see that as a thing, because to me every single aspect of creation is divine. But now with the followers of Abraham, they constantly want to push the divine on something outside of themselves, as their scriptures and dogmas call for. And that's the biggest.
Here's the thing though, like, a lot of people, and as a non-dualist, like people ask me that question, and it just really always just reminds me, most people don't experience this sort of oneness with God. They don't experience themselves as you're describing the nature of God. They experience this duality. They experience, I'm here, you're over there, the ups, the downs, the dichotomies. That's sort of intuitive. So why is creation like that? Why is that the apparent reality, this duality? Why is that what's so apparent to people? Because it seems like that would be sort of a wall of separation that one could connect with God, because mentally they're a dualist. And so what you're saying is we are God. So how can one realize that when their reality is this limitation and duality and all that?
Well, I think a lot of people are preconditioned into perceiving that dualism, so because of the religions that are out there, I think a lot of people are just preconditioned into that. But now, for me, that's okay. So there's the dark light decalogue, okay, which is 10 fundamental traits that I perceive to be the one true creator or God, which isn't something separate from us. But see, the very first thing is unity. The second one is consciousness, dark, light, and paradox. And right now, what you're talking about to me is hitting on the paradox of it. How can something be united and divided simultaneously? How can something be dark and light simultaneously? How can something be something and nothing simultaneously? And to me, that contrast is necessary to distill the distance and the time in which all of creation can be expressed. because what I call it is the fractal singularity omnimatrix. It is one of my theories that everything actually exists at the same time and place simultaneously. That everything, that everything is ultimately just a living dream, because everything is actually everything is the unity. Okay, and the unity infinitely fractalizes to distill the creation that we find ourselves immersed in.
Can I throw something at you? Can you give me a
Yeah.
second?
Yep.
Have you heard of the a fallacy called a distinction without a difference?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Okay. The distinction without a difference is that if you're defining something in a way that is the exact same thing that someone else is already using as a terminology, but you're saying, but it's different. And the reason that I bring it up is because I think that many of us would agree in terms of what you're calling God, we call the universe. And I'm curious if you can define what the difference is on how you see what the universe is and what the God is. Would you say that you have different definitions, or there's some separation between the God is all of us or the God is the universe? It seems like we could just say we are the universe, and it seems like it served the same thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's the
how-
distinction
that's what
without a
I'm saying.
difference. It's
But-
it's categorized as a
but-
fallacy. I encourage you to read on it.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't see a separation between yourself and the universe. You know what I'm saying? I don't see a separation. I see the unity between the self and the universe.
I completely agree. And I think more people need to see themselves as they are all a part of the collective universe. Okay. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But when we throw God into it and we don't like, it's now the same definition of universe. That's like one of these terms becomes useless. It would seem that one of these terms becomes useless, and you could throw one away or the other, but they seem like they're the same thing.
Well, God is definitely a bad touch word, to a lot of theists. Just you could absolutely call it all kinds of different things and leave the word God out. Like God is not a necessary word to describe it. But if you're asking, ultimately, I am a theist. I just that's like saying, okay, do you see the universe as divine or naturalistic? I see it as divine and naturalistic. I roll with a lot of atheists. I love the atheist arguments. I love the atheist criticism. I know you don't like that word, Robert. So everyone's an atheist, but you atheist, right?
Oh no, I don't have a problem with atheists. I don't have a problem being called atheist. Yeah, you saw a video I made about. I don't have a problem being called atheist. Okay. Definitionally, it's what I fit into.
I think I know what dark light is talking about, though. Yeah. And if I could, to just suggest maybe one way to answer that, what Robert asked you, because he does bring up a really good point, and it's a pretty popular fallacy people make. But what I usually do, because I'm a non-dualist, so I kind of share that problem sometimes in discussions. So the way I look at it is I'm a mereological nihilist. So what that means is that depending on your perspective, identity can change, for sure. Like I would say, for example, if my boss told me, hey, go into the reception room, we've got to do some accounting of some assets. And he'll usually ask me, tell me how many assets are on the table. And what he's asking for is like, is it a computer and a monitor, or is it a computer, a monitor, and like a UPS device that powers it or whatever? Like, how many assets do we have to swap out over there? So I'll usually answer like, if I want to keep my job, like 2 or 3 things, like, 2 assets, whatever. But if I was going to answer that question as a physicist, I might say, well, actually, almost an infinity amount of assets are on there, depending on how you look at it. So if I answer it, and keep my job, I'm going to say 2 things or 3 things. As a physicist, you could count up all the atoms, subatomic particles, which are just fields, which are just really mathematical equations, and they're all sort of configured in a computer-wise and a monitor-wise way, but it's all just one big reality. like that. It's all just one big connected field of energy, right? So that's sort of undeniable, but it actually supports your whole theology, though, I think, in a way.
Do Chairs Exist is a great video. I just put a link in there. I want to tell you, if y'all are interested in this kind of identity philosophy, Do Chairs Exist is one of the best videos you can watch if you're not big into reading some of these people that talk about like the identity of the table, like Bertrand Russell's The Problem of Philosophy and stuff like this. At least watch that video, Do Chairs Exist. It really helps you sort. Yeah, I put it in the chat. Decide.
So that's maybe that's would you say, Robert, that's sort of like a paraconsistent logical argument for that answer to that fallacy?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, everything is reducible, even beyond what we know it to be reducible. We don't even know the maximum reducibility, even past like quarks. We tend to think like quarks and then into just pure energy, you know.
Well,
but then you have
fluctuations.
Right. Then you could get into quantum fluctuations that could be. And then you have energy that is like a usable energy and non-usable energy. So you have like maximum entropy energy that is all spread out, you know, to the degree that it's just a gradient of heat. But anyway, I digress. Everything is reducible more and more and more.
Well, I think you say you digress, but I think that actually follows right along the vein of this topic, really, because your original question is, you know, isn't calling the universe God, does it therefore make calling it God meaningless? But I think that's just another way to call it. That's just like saying, okay, everything's made up of quantum fluctuations, therefore to talk about any distinction within creation is useless, you know, because everything is just quantum fluctuations, you know. But I don't think, you know, like all of matter is made of atoms, therefore to talk about any distinction of matter is useless. You know what I'm saying? It's all matter, but there are possible distinctions that you could make in order to
That's why I asked you your distinction, though. That's why before I got into it, what's your distinction, or do you have a definitional distinction between God and the universe? And if you do, by all means, I'm all ears for it. But it seems if you don't have a definitional distinction that says this is where the universe ends, or this is where God ends, and the universe is just the rest. You know, if you don't have a distinction, then it is a distinction without a difference. It seems like it's the same thing. I will extend this olive branch to you, though. There is, at least in calling it God, a religious connotation to it that is not so much reflective of what the reality is or what its definition is, but rather our demeanor and our attitude towards it. So
right.
When we call it the universe, we might think of this in more of a cold and unreflective and disconnected nuance. Whereas when we call it God, we're saying it with a sense of reverence for the universe, and we're thinking of it as something more reverenced. So that's the only thing that I think you could add to it by saying that.
Like a perspective, like with the example I was showing, you've got my perspective of two devices. You've got a physicist who'll call it a quantum field. And you've got a religious perspective that can call it God, you know, because it's all just the universe, you know.
Yeah,
So,
well, I think that's the freedom of perception. You know, I don't think that lessens the perceptions, but one way or another. I just think, if anything, that's just multiple different lanes of perspective that you could go down. I don't think it really lessens either or. If anything, that just enriches the language with which you can describe something. But no, I'm not saying that as like a proof of God or anything, but like, I mean, I definitely
God
get that.
You don't need a proof. We believe.
Yeah, well, I understand that God itself is a bad touch word for a lot of theists. I understand that, you know.
Yeah.
Well, like the mystics would say, a mystic would say, well, how would you describe God or the universe or reality, fundamental reality? A mystic would just say, well, if I begin to tell you, I start lying. It's like,
I have another term, which is fractal singularity omnimatrix. I much prefer that term than God, because I think that's more specific as to what the universe or God actually is. But it's I'm trying to take that word back from all the other theists out there using the word God. By me using the same word God, but calling it, something totally different. Not only am I redefining that for atheists, but I'm also redefining that for theists as well. And I'm just showing people that there's a different way that you can look at this thing,
I think that yours is lining up with almost what the AC/DC quote is of God. I don't know if you've heard this, that God is the name of the blanket we throw over mystery to give it shape. There's a type of reverence to it, but you're calling God just the shape of the mystery, and you're giving reverence to it.
Well, I don't know, Doc. Do you have reverence for God?
Well, I have reverence for all of creation, and I think all of creation is. Now, I don't have reverence for the Abrahamic God. I don't have reverence for the Abrahamic perception of God, because they have scriptures which, command harm on their fellow man to anyone that doesn't capitulate to their particular perception of God. So I very much so have defiance for the Abrahamic gods. So like I don't take God as like a blanket terminology that equally describes everything. That's why I'm trying to take it back. I'm trying to take back the word God from what the Abrahamic religions have done to it.
I think a lot of other belief systems are doing the same thing. That's why I'm always intrigued with your belief system, because I know you got a lot of thought that went into it. And I find it, as a comparison to the Judeo-Christian Abrahamic God, I find your God, idea of God, to be better. Right? And that I will say. But I probably, I'm not with you on certain things for sure. Mm-hmm. But I think it makes more sense than the Abrahamic God, as you.
I am. I'm with him all the way. I'm about ready to convert, but I just will call it the universe, not God, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm spearheading the Alliance of Defiance movement, which is anyone that opposes the broken theology of Abraham, which is, that they act like they own the world, but there's actually more people that do not capitulate to the Abrahamic theology. If you count everyone else, because to them it's us versus everyone, just like in their dogmas, us versus the world. Okay, you keep going around saying that long enough, the world's gonna fucking look at you and be like, motherfucker. So it's the Alliance of Defiance. That's for everyone that the Abrahamic theology has wronged, and up to and including the adherents of that theology, because one by one they're gonna wake up to the falsehoods interwoven into their dogmas. Like Bryce Mitchell, the people that say, this here book is the truth. The problem is, if you can find one single thing in that book that is not the truth, then that entirely shatters that claim. And the more you can multiply the things that you can find in there that are untrue, just the more and more it shatters that claim.
Yeah.
Now, Bryce Mitchell was cool as shit, though, in person. He was cool.
That presupposes it's not definitionally true, and that you just have to understand reality in a way that aligns with it being definitionally true. This is the presuppositional, stronghold.
You're doing the work of the devil, the enemy. You're becoming the enemy of the church. You're doing the devil's work. That's what they'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think presuppositional is laughable, because obviously we all really base reality on sense data. It's clear that we do. The sense data, the inputs, we don't look at a car coming and say, let me see what God feels about that before they get the hell out of the road. We see that car coming and we think, okay, I'm going to trust my senses on this, and I'm going to get the hell out of the road. So all of us will ultimately lead to that. And at some point, especially when it comes to intense sense data, such as your hand on the stove, as what's his name, Sam Adams likes to reference back to, not Sam Harris. At some point, you just cannot ignore the input from that sense data. At some point, it's just all that you can think of. It says that's hot, and you have to react to it. But that's the foundation of things. You don't need a presupposition of anything else.
Yeah.
Hey, TSPCI, how you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. Glad you stopped by.
The universe is an image of God. That's the distinction. That's what he says.
Yeah, I wish I could talk to him. I want more of an explanation about that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the universe is an image of God. That's the distinction.
Well, let's talk about that right there, that statement in relation to limit, because followers of Abraham like to say that their God is all powerful and limitless, but that can't be true. If you look at all of reality, all of creation, everything is based upon limit. Okay, the entire periodic table is nothing but a chart full of limits, which is essentially what all of matter is based off of, is limits. The speed of light is a limit, and a limit is a
boundary.
Limit is not a liability. Limit is what actually allows creation to exist, because without these limits, creation would not exist. So, limit is actually a good thing. And so my perception of God is not limitless, but is limited.
Have y'all heard of the last Thursday problem with the God being able to do everything? I don't know if are y'all familiar with the last Thursdayism?
No.
Okay, so,
Yeah, I am.
Oh, you are. All right. So just for the rest, I'll briefly run you. The last Thursdayism is the proposition that we just started last Thursday. All of reality literally just started last Thursday, and it's all backloaded with all the data, with all the memory, everything that you think you lived through. It's all just put in there, right? It's
Kind of
almost
like
like a
Dark
replica.
City. The movie Dark City from back in the day.
Yes,
You
yes,
remember
with the replica thing that all of her childhood was a lie, and all of this.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Or you're talking about a different one. I was talking about the replicas with Sam Harris.
There's a movie called Dark City where every single night these aliens come in and change everyone's memories and
Okay.
totally give them a totally different life, but they like restart over. But these people don't know it. Like they just
that
wake
one
up.
was a little different.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
the
that was
oldest one that I remember referencing this on screen was from I think it was called Replicas. It was with Sam Harris, not Sam Harris. Why am I keep saying Sam? Harrison Ford.
Okay.
Harrison Ford was in it. I don't know if it was called Replicas, but anyway, there was a lady in there that at some point she was told that all of her memories, everything, that it's not real. She's a replica, and that all of that was artificially created and put in. But anyway, so the ideal of last Thursdayism is that all of this just started last Thursday. It's all pre-created with this. And the reason that I mentioned that as a starting place to start is if it could be the case, if God wanted what he really wanted as a goal is he wanted a bride to be selected from the group, right? That whatever life they lived, whatever character they become, he was going to select all that and take it up into heaven, and he'd choose his bride. He could have started with just preloaded all of that, made the cartridge, if he's all powerful, and started it in heaven. The universe, the physical reality, none of that even needed to exist if he's all powerful. But if he cannot do that, and he cannot create that bride and the people and the group that he wants to select, if he can't do it, then he's got to do it systemically. And that means that the universe can do something systematically that God can't. So it means that he has to run through the gauntlet of creating reality, letting it shape people, let their interactions get them to a shape or a mold, and then say, I select that, and that goes up into heaven with me. If you were all powerful, that's a total waste of time and energy. You just make it just like last Thursdayism already in heaven, and you skip all of this physical pain and suffering and everything.
Well, there's some real life examples of that in the Bible. Like take sin, for example. If God was all powerful, the Abrahamic God, then he could just simply forgive your sins. He would not need blood atonement for your sins. Okay. And also, if God was all powerful, then he could enact his will without breaking his commandments. And if his commandments were important, like the followers of Abraham, this here book, that's the word of God, and that's the most important thing. If his word was truly important to him, he would want to enact his will without breaking his word. So the fact that he breaks his word means that either he doesn't have the power to enact his will without breaking his word, or he's not all loving, like he has the power and he is all knowing. He knows a better way to do it, but he doesn't care enough to do it. So either he's not all powerful, he's not all knowing, or he's not all loving, or all of them, but either way, you can apply that same principle directly to the problems in the Bible itself.
Well,
all omni, all infinite power stuff, it all runs into paradoxes. It all creates paradoxes. You can't have infinite. It's not just like the immovable stone and the unstoppable object, or can God create a stone that he can't move? It's not just those problems. Like anytime you apply omni or an infinite thing, and then you set them against one another, like reality will rectify. If you think about the unmovable object and the unstoppable force, what would happen when they actually collide? Let me tell you what will happen. The reality will simply rectify that. One of them will prove not to be, or both of them will prove not to be absolute. It's the nature of reality. So the idea that there's this omni or this complete or this absolute, it's just paradoxical. It can't happen.
Well, in the Bible, God shows himself to kind of be both. Like he's omniscient and yet he's not omniscient. Like, like in the Bible, God says in Numbers, 23:19, it says, God is not a man that he should lie, or the son of man that he should change his mind, right? And then you've got...
Or repent in some versions.
Repent, but yeah, it's all the same, word that means change his mind or whatever.
Those are just claims, though. Those are claims of the omnis. But then I know what you're getting at, though, because then you got
changes his mind, like in Exodus 32:14, he tells Moses that I changed my mind from the disaster that I had spoken of bringing on to my people. So the book itself,
other verses where he sends a lying spirit. Okay, so that's God telling a lie. If you're sending a lying spirit, so you have the claims versus the reality, which is kind of goes with what Robert was saying. Reality will reveal, what claims are true or not true, and I think that goes along with, everything within our known reality is based on limit. So the minute you say that something is limitless, that doesn't align with reality.
Well, I'm seeing the side chat over here that the Bible is for instruction. There's really no way around the ideological ideal that God repented from what he had said. He turned from that position. It means that he was at course. He was in a trajectory he thought this way, and then something changed his mind. It repented the Lord, is what the KJV, if I'm not mistaken, says in this context. So this is no uncertain terms. There's not a definitional problem here. This is not a teacher problem. This is inside of the ideology of the writer, that it repented the Lord. He was thinking of doing it this way, and then he changed that. That is a problem with being coherent with an all-knowing mind. An all-knowing mind cannot have known all of this in advance and then say, I changed my mind. I'm gonna do it a different way. Oh. So either it's wrong, either the text is completely wrong, the writer was mistaken, or this is a serious problem. This is just their ideology, and it's
not God was lying.
Ideology. Right, or God was lying, one or the other.
Well, God did send a lying spirit, like Doc Light said, in the Bible. So that in and of itself is just completely off the track of God being honest all the time, right?
Yes.
He sent a lying spirit.
God cannot lie, absolutely. And it's fine. Whoever in the chat, they said that the Bible is what was the phrase they used?
It's instructional.
Instructional.
Okay. It's fine to say that the Bible is instructional. The problem is when you say that the all-knowing, all-powerful God is the one that wrote the Bible, which is the claim that they're making. It's fine. You can say that the Bible is instructional, but the problem arises when you say that the all-knowing God wrote that Bible.
But we're all God, Dark Light. So when technically God did write it.
Yes.
I'd agree with that, but I wouldn't agree that we are all knowing, though, because as I said, my perception of God is not all powerful, is not all knowing. I would say it is all what is it? Exists everywhere. But that's about the only one of the omnis that I would accept is omnipresent. Only
Tangelo backstage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm actually
I-
going to give him a spot here myself because there's going to be a lot of talking with 5 people in here anyway. But I appreciate you letting me on, Lou. Yeah, Dark, I'd like to see you on the show sometime.
Yeah,
Scott, as always, it's good talking to you, man.
Yeah, nice
Have a
talking to
good
you,
one.
man.
All right, later.
I'm going to let Tangelo on, and let's not gang up on him. Let him say his piece, and maybe we can respond, have a nice conversation.
At least seems reasonable. That Catholic was pissing me off, bro.
No, Tangelo is a nice guy, I think. But,
No, I've seen him before. Yeah, he's cool.
all right, Tangelo, there you are.
God, is that you?
It is me, son. You.
Hey, Tangelo, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. And you guys?
I love your background. That's
Nice
not
house.
real, right?
Of course it's real. You don't see it?
Otangelo plays the piano.
So how are you, Tangelo?
Doing good. Doing good. And you guys?
I'm glad to hear you well. Really am.
Yeah.
So you saw the prompt.
So that's reality, actually.
Oh, okay, you had me fooled. I thought you just had a nice ass house.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
I have the same house in one of my backgrounds. Yep.
Yeah.
So, what convinced you that God is real, Otangelo?
Well, it is many things, I think. I mean, this is a construction. And I mean, I am a believer for over 40 years. So there are many reasons why I believe. And I would say one reason is that I'm unconvinced that we can exist without a creator.
So you look
Okay.
at the world around you and infer that there must be a creator because of all the complexity of the world and the beauty of the world, and all the intelligence in the world. There must be a rational mind behind it all. I can understand that.
Yeah.
Is that it, Tangelo? Like in a nutshell? Because I hear that, and by the way, lots of people feel the same way you do. Because I hear that all the time.
Well, I think there are 2 main legs, so to say. One is natural theology, and the second is direct revelation in the Bible.
So, more specifically, though, what made you think that the Christian God of the Bible is real? Because that's a leap going from God is real to the Christian God is real. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, if you are talking specifically about Christ, I am for several years dedicating a lot of time on the Shroud of Turin, and I think that this is the empirical link which corroborates Christ's crucifixion and resurrection.
What if the Shroud of Turin turned out to be a hoax 100%? Would that destroy your faith?
Well, the thing is that when I was a young convert and I was reading already about the Shroud in 1985 in a book which is called Jesus Lived in India. And there they have a chapter where they presented the Shroud, and that's the first time that I became aware of it. And I believe that it is true, the true burial cloth of Jesus. And then in 1988 came the radiocarbon test out. And I said, well, if they definitely tested it as from the Middle Ages, then there is no reason to keep believing it. Okay, so I stopped believing in the Shroud, but that didn't stop me to believe in the Gospels.
Gotcha.
I got one question, Tangelo, because I'm listening carefully to what you're saying, and it's just something that I'd like to know how you're thinking on this. And that would be with the with the shroud, if God wanted that to be the empirical evidence, why did he make it so that there'd be so much dispute about it? Like, couldn't he have made it more empirical?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question, Lou. And I think that God doesn't want to prove in an absolute sense his existence to us, because that would remove free will. And I think that God wants that we come freely to him. So I paraphrase, God gives enough light to those that seek him and want to find him, and he gives enough darkness to those which want to live autonomous to him. And the same goes for the shroud. You know, I mean, I think God would have the power to make a high resolution photograph as we have it today. That would be perfectly in his power, I believe, but he didn't want to give us absolute proof. And
why not, though?
this-
That's what
again, because I think that he wants to preserve our free will. So for me, that is studying the shroud, it is a very, very powerful evidence. But then there are those which prefer to deny that it is the true burial cloth of Jesus for all kind of reasons, and the shroud permits us to keep that position.
But
Well,
even
did
if you had
free will,
even if you had 100% proof, you would still have the free will to walk away from it.
yeah,
You know, your claim right there. Even if you had 100% proof that was the Shroud of Turin was the legit covering of Jesus, we would still have the free will to walk away from that. So,
well, the free will to walk away, yes, but once that the evidence becomes so overwhelming, then I mean, it becomes unbearable to think, well, he actually does exist, but I don't want to live with him. And I mean, this becomes then a very, very acute, I would say, dilemma. And I don't think that this would give you the free range to live in an autonomous way to him, as it would be if he would not completely prove himself to us.
did the Apostle Paul have sufficient evidence that Jesus was real to him? Because, you know, he had the vision and the experience directly. Same with Moses, same with Jesus, same with the disciples who walked with the resurrected Jesus. Did that ruin their free will?
Yeah, I think so. And that's a good question to which I don't have an answer.
And Geo Sam was, I think, thinking along the same lines, and that is Satan had free will, right? And he knew totally exactly who God was, right?
He still does, right?
Yeah, but God never took his free will away.
Yeah. Yeah, these are good points. I don't dispute them.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They are good points.
Divine hiddenness. Yeah, that's the problem. Go ahead.
I have a question, kind of changing directions a little bit. In your perception, what is the source of divine revelation?
Himself. He is the source, revealing himself.
Okay, but I'm sure you will say that the way that this divine revelation is captured, though, is in your Bible, right?
I don't understand. What is your question?
Is the Bible special revelation?
Yes. Well, yes, I believe so.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at is, you know, most followers of Abraham say that their holy books themselves are the source of divine revelation. And I'm just asking, do you agree with that?
Oh, I would say that the text is the result of God's revelation, which has been testified and then been written down by those which had these experiences.
Okay, so really quick, I got a prop right here. This thing right here, this little spice bottle, this is the source of divine revelation. Okay, what would you call that if I came up to you and said, this thing right here is the source of divine revelation?
Well, I would say that all our existence, including what you just showed, is divine revelation, because I think that if there would be no divine, there would be no physical and spiritual existence. I
That'd
think
be
that
natural
surrounds
revelation.
everything.
Wouldn't that be natural revelation?
Yes, natural revelation.
Yes.
Well, a lot of followers of Abraham, when I just did that right there, and I said this right here is the source of divine revelation, a lot of followers of Abraham would say, no, what you just presented to me is an idol. A physical thing that you are claiming is the source of divine revelation is an idol. And my whole point with that little demonstration is, to me, the holy books of the followers of Abraham themselves are idols.
Well, I mean, maybe you need to define what is meant by idol, and this has a very specific meaning, which is grounded in idolatry in the Old Testament, where they had different deities, where they fabricated statues to which they assigned divine power, and then considered these statues as divine and worshipped them.
So to me, anything that we make, I view us all as co-creators. Anything that we as co-creators make is a totem, okay? But the minute that you say, this here thing that I made, this thing is the source of divine revelation, the second you do that, you then elevate that totem into an idol. And I don't see anything wrong with a totem, and I don't even care about idols, but I just like to bring the idol thing up because followers of Abraham often like to call every other thing besides their holy book an idol. And I feel that's a very strong argument I have as to why the Bible itself is an idol, because the actual source of divine revelation is, as I would call it, our divine sovereignty, which is our inseparable connection to the actual one true creator. Our connection to the one true creator, because all divine revelation flows from the one true creator through the divine sovereignty unto the creation, is the way I would call it.
Yeah, for me, the Bible is important because there I can understand who God is, his nature. And nature shows me his power, his intelligence.
So does the knowledge of God exist outside of the Bible, is a question I would have for you.
Yeah, we can have a lot of knowledge about God's power and intelligence when we look around us and see all the complexity and the greatness of the natural world, but that doesn't give us the answer about God's identity. So it is limited.
Well, I'm not limit phobic. I don't have anything against limit. As we talked about earlier, I think everything within the physical world is based on and necessarily needs limit. So what I'm getting at here, though, is we can know God without the Bible. Is my position that you do not need a book to tell you about God, because outside of that book we have our divine sovereignty, and our divine sovereignty is our inseparable connection to the one true creator, and we don't need a book to dictate that to us, is my stance.
Well, I mean, of course, God can reveal himself outside of the Bible, which I think he has done many times with special revelation, with appearing to people in dreams and whatever kind of things outside of the Bible. But the Bible to me is showing to us who God is, his nature, and God's plan of salvation through Jesus Christ, through the incarnation of Jesus Christ. And of course, as a Christian, this is very important to me, to know that I am loved, that I am valued, and that there is meaning for my life, and that I can have hope for eternal life.
Hey, Tangelo, I want to ask you something because I'm curious, and the other people on the panel, Scott and Doc, you can also just let me know what you think. But do you feel that the Bible at very least, can be an idol? Or do you think it cannot be an idol? I think it can. So that's my answer.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it would be very difficult for someone erecting the Bible as God's revelation as God itself, because the Bible is a book which reveals who God is, who is a spirit, which is beyond and above the physical natural world. So it's not a material thing, it's not a book or something like that. So there would have to be extreme misinterpretation and misunderstanding about the Bible itself.
From when you think about what the Bible really is and what we're talking about, the way I look at it is it's a document. It's a document that was canonized. A lot of it was left out on purpose. This stuff was eventually ratified by 419 AD, right? Through all these different councils, like the Council of Hippo, Carthage, Damascus, and then it finally came out to be the product that we roughly have today. So it's not the complete written works of early Christians. That's not the complete work. It's been handpicked and voted into being as the canonized word of God, according to these popes and leaders and people like that from the early Catholic Church. So when you look at that book in that perspective, it's sort of, it kind of takes the, the specialness about it that you may have felt about the Bible. Like, oh, this is like from heaven, just dropped to the earth for us, the complete word of God, all of his thoughts. But when you really look at how the Bible was compiled, composed, how it was written, then you go into the text and you actually understand that a lot of it was added, like the long ending of Mark, and many of the epistles of Paul were forgeries. A lot of additions, a lot of stuff was left out, missing, So I don't know. How does that affect your belief at all, if at all?
The main creed of the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 15, is by the Apostle Paul, written very early after the events of the crucifixion, maybe 20 years afterwards. And it's the core of the gospel that Jesus was crucified, that he rose the third day. This is the core message, and that he died on the cross to redeem us from our sins and to forgive us and give us eternal life. So on this hangs the Christian faith. Either this is true and Christianity stands, or it falls, and then it's disproven. So that's the big question. And again, I think that the Muslims, they dispute that Jesus is the second person of the triune God. They dispute that it was Christ that was crucified and did resurrect. They believe it was someone else. And my answer is, well, we don't have just the reports in the Bible. We have the Shroud of Turin, which is the burial cloth of Jesus, and the Sudarium of Oviedo, which also combines perfectly as the face cloth also mentioned in the apostle from the Gospel of John. So we have material evidence that these facts actually are true.
But how do we know that the Shroud of Turin is actually what we claim it to be, what you're claiming it to be? What is the proof? Because you mentioned that everything I've read about the Shroud of Turin is it's inconclusive. At best, it doesn't date all the way back to where they say it does. There's a lot of controversy. I don't know about what the consensus is on it as for it being truly the shroud that Jesus was wrapped in at his death. Do you have any citations for that?
Well, the thing is, as I said previously, that I think that God didn't want to give any kind of absolute proof. but I think it is one of the elements which add to the puzzle. And if you analyze it as I've done, then I think it is very convincing.
Right.
Well,
So that's what I'm asking you. What makes it so convincing to you?
Well, I think one of the most amazing facts is the image itself, which we know it isn't a painting. It isn't made with chemicals. It is a very superficial change of the chemical nature of 2 microns, a very superficial change of the bonds of the cellulose, which conveys that kind of coloration. And we don't have even today the technique to replicate this phenomena. So this is very, very interesting. And I mean, there are many different things as well, which I am actually finishing a second book on the shroud, where I put all these lines of evidence together: the linen cloth, where it came from, the blood marks. We have post-mortem and pre-mortem blood, the wounds, which are not through the palms but through the wrist, which is the correct anatomical place. Then there is pollen of the shroud, which is from the Palestinian area. So it's definitely the cloth was there at some time in the past. And I could go on. There are so many lines of evidence which can be mentioned.
Like, was it dated to the 1st century?
Well, the radiocarbon dating gave date 1260 to 1390. And of course, this is a very disputed number. There are several different hypotheses why this date was given. But I've studied also the pre-1355 track record of the shroud, and there are some very, very interesting lines of evidence, like the Pantocrator from Mount Sinai, which is a painting which was a prototype used afterwards in the entire Byzantine era to make the paintings of the icons and so forth. And I have made an overlay, and it matches over 90% with the shroud. So the artist certainly used the shroud as a template to make that painting. That's one. There is also the Byzantine coins from they are called solidus coins from the 8th century. There you see very different evidence, like the bifurcated beard, which matches with the beard on the shroud. And if you make an overposition, then there are many things as well which match.
That's called a
These are just two
Byzantine
examples.
Byzantine coin.
It is called solidus coin. It's a gold coin from the Byzantine Empire from the 8th century.
How do you spell that?
Solidus coin.
Solidus coin.
Now, I got a quick question. Now, would you consider the shroud itself to be an idol?
Well, for me, it is just the burial cloth of Jesus. Of course, there are people which erect it to an idol, but for me, it is just something that the Lord left behind as further evidence that what is in the Gospels is true.
To me, it looks like a graven image.
Well, I mean, it would be so if someone would have made it, but it is called the image not made by human hands, because it was left behind by the Lord himself. So nobody made it. It was God himself.
Well, that's the claim. The claim is that no one made it. But I'm granting that even if God made it. Okay, well, let's start here. Do you believe that the Bible was authored by the all-knowing God, and that every word in it is true, or no? I'm just asking.
No, I believe that it was written by fallen men, which were fallible, which made errors. So I think what they wrote was eyewitness reports, what they saw. That's why we have supposed discrepancies. So God used men which are not perfect.
So my question is more specifically geared towards the Old Testament. What's your stance on Old Testament?
And the same as the New Testament, God used those writers to write it. So I don't like that kind of theology where they say each word was specifically as it is inspired by God. It's on. It is. There are no errors. I'm not going with that.
Got to leave some wiggle room in there. But now, what I was getting at is because in the Old Testament, it specifically says, do not add to or subtract a single verse from the Torah. Because I watch a lot of Jewish content too. Tovia Singer. I watch a lot of Tovia Singer. And so the problem arises with the New Testament itself, because the New Testament is a huge addition. And along with that, the Old Testament that they bring along, they did change quite a few things from the Old Testament itself. So that is a big addition, along with subtractions from the original Old Testament, which is what the Christians base their authority off of, right? So what I'm getting at here is when you go to add the New Testament while at the same time changing some things about the Old Testament, that is undermining the power and authority that the Christians are attempting to stand on, is my perception.
Well, I don't think that the New Testament changes something in the Old Testament. I think that it's the fulfillment of the coming Messiah, which was foretold in the Old Testament. There are 350 prophecies about 60 specific events, which then are reported that occurred in the life of Jesus.
Let me invite. I'm gonna just call out Rick Velasco. I posted a link, and that is because if you want to come in, you can come in, all right, and you should, speak your mind, all right, and I promise to be friendly.
There's room for more.
I'm just asking because he's talking about the prophecies like Tangelo's talking about,
Well, there are claims of Jesus fulfilling the prophecies, but Jesus actually doesn't fulfill one single prophecy. And Jesus claimed, he said, I do not come to abolish the laws, but to fulfill them. But at the same time, he abolishes almost everything about Judaism when he transforms it into Christianity. So that's actually one of my points that I hold up as a lie from Jesus. That's one of Jesus's lies.
Yeah, like what prophecy are we talking about? Like what prophet talked about Jesus? I don't never read that in the Old Testament.
Well, there is one which I think is very powerful, which is Daniel 9:24-27, which makes a prediction about the coming of the Messiah. And
Daniel
9:24-27.
Uh-huh.
And I've written about this in my book, Confirming Yeshua. And it is not a long time ago, about 50 or 60 years ago, that they came up with the precise timeline how that prophecy was fulfilled in Jesus. And it goes straight to 33 AD when he was crucified.
Well, like, I guess that view is that, there was like a Messiah mentioned, right? But it isn't a future savior, but it was like a historical figure from the 2nd century BCE when that part of Daniel was written, right?
Well, I think that Daniel was written probably in the 7th or 6th century BC, not the second BC. I mean, this has been for a long time been claimed that it was a much earlier writing, but recent studies have confirmed that some details which are in the book of Daniel, they clearly point to the 7th or 6th century BC.
Well, I mean, we can get into that and go through the different scholars that disagree, but I won't really care, because the point that I'm making is that talks about the anointed one, which most scholars are going to identify as Cyrus the Great, the one who issued the decree to return, or Joshua the high priest, as they say. Like even the second anointed one, who was that? Onias the third, who was murdered in 171 CE BC. So that wasn't Jesus. And when it talks about the prince who is to come, most scholars identify that as Antiochus sixth. And all those were before Jesus, right? And all those things are pretty much unanimously agreed upon by Christian scholars, except for the apologists. I'm not including them. Like, it's the same with Isaiah. A lot of people point to Isaiah, but it was clearly talking about the house of Israel and, the return from Babylon and everything like that. And I know a lot of Christians point to these things, but I've never seen the connection. That's why I stopped being a Christian. Is like that's the first thing, is that it seems like Jesus couldn't really fulfill any of these prophecies. They've already been fulfilled. They've already been shown to be fulfilled elsewhere within the context of the prophecy itself. To say that it parallels Christianity is sort of ad hoc. It's like just pronouncing that. It's like me, if I got on a donkey and rode into Jerusalem, I could say, see, I fulfilled the scripture. I fulfilled the prophecy. Like, anybody can really do that. That'll be the argument people would make,
Yeah, I'll be happy to send you my book and indicate where you can read about it. And you can read the arguments and then think about it. I just put my email in the private chat. So if you're interested.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and copy it.
Hey, Tangelo, I wanted to ask you a couple things just based on, the conversation that we're all having. All right. You mentioned the shroud. It's obviously important to you, but the shroud is not the reason that you believe in God, right? The reason, it might be a reason that you're giving yourself to keep believing in God, but that wasn't the reason you believe in God, right?
I don't know if, I've been several times on your channel. I don't know if I think I gave already my testimony, but I can repeat it. I've gone through depression when I was a teenager, 15, 16 years old, and I was looking at a way out and starting to pray. That was one of the things I said was worth trying. And so I did, and I felt that this helped me to get out of depression. And then I started to read the Bible. I had a lot of questions, and then I was invited to visit an evangelical church. There I met people which answered these questions, and they explained the gospel to me, and I said, well, yes, I want to receive Christ as Lord and Savior. So there I took the decision. So that was my starting point.
Yeah, but I mean, you would agree that the shroud is not the reason you believe in God. It's just like helping in your belief.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing about prophecies, okay, we could go specific prophecies, but that gets kind of boring to me because we're going into these details about this scripture and what it meant. All right. I did a video on one of the, on Isaiah. I did one video about that because there's the idea that the Christians have, and then there's the idea that the Jewish religion has, and they're completely different ideas about the same verses. All right. Now, that doesn't mean one is right or wrong. It's the thing that really, I really struggle with is there's a God who you believe in that's all powerful and he has all knowledge. And yet he did choose to give very weird types of evidence. Like he didn't choose to actually give us something that we could look at and say, this is definitive. All right. And I just don't understand why. And I'm not saying you have the answer, Tangelo, but I don't understand why a God would do that. Like he's going to leave me, an atheist, with some nebulous claims that may or may not be true. And I don't understand why any loving being would do that.
Yeah, I obviously I see it a little bit different. I think that God has given us very powerful evidence that gives us good reasons to believe, and one is the revelation which we have in the Bible, and the other is natural theology, is natural revelation. On the other hand, I don't see how someone can believe that we are the product of mere chance, of happenstance. That makes absolutely no sense to me, and that's the only alternative that you really have. It's really binary. Either there was an intelligent, powerful mind that created everything, which is the bottom of reality, or we are just the product of mere luck. And this is
No,
an answer which I don't think.
I don't really think that's a true dichotomy at all. All right. I think that like I'm going to tell you my personal beliefs about, you know, all things that exist. I personally feel that there always was something that existed. So I don't even believe like, you know, there had to be somebody or some person or something at all that started this. I believe in infinity as being all things, like you could say the universe. All right.
Brahma.
I think the universe has always existed. Now I recognize that's my own personal feelings and my own view, but the idea that because there's a universe, there must be a God is simply not true. That's not true.
Well, I think it is very categorical to say that's not true. You would need to have all knowingness in order to make that claim, which I think you don't have. And second, when you believe that the universe is eternal, and I think you are rational on that by eliminating that eventually nothing created the universe, that's a rational harakiri. That's not possible because nothing has no causal powers. So obviously, if you remove God from the picture, then the only reasonable alternative that you have is to say, well, the universe always existed in one form of the other. The problem that I have with this proposition, Lou, is first of all that the second law of thermodynamics, philosophy of time, and Big Bang cosmology, they all point to a beginning and of the universe, of our universe at least, and not of an endless universe which existed in the past. And then there is also fine tuning. We only exist and have this conversation because the universe is fine tuned to permit life permitting planet Earth. And there are over 150 different parameters which must be just right in order for us to be here and for advanced life to be here. How do you explain this if there is no power which had this intention to fine tune things to make all this happen? And I mean, there you have to resort to multiverses and all kind of abstract things which atheist philosophers bring to the table. And these are things which just don't convince me. I think God is a more parsimonious explanation.
But we're talking about beliefs, okay? And I have no problem with people believing different things. All right, you know, beliefs are fine. You believe this, I believe something else. I believe the universe always existed. You believe a God created the universe. Okay. I mean, we're allowed to have beliefs, but you don't really know the things you believe. Is that correct? Or you feel you know the things you believe?
Well, I think I having feelings of knowing is one thing. I proving that things are the way I think it is, I cannot do that. So we do not have access to ultimate reality to make absolute claims. That's why we all hold beliefs. And I think you are very correct on that, Lou. It is important that we respect other beliefs. That's why we are having a civil conversation right now.
Okay.
And
this,
I think it's good to admit that you can also compare different models. You know, you can compare the theist model against the materialist physicalist model, or against an idealist model, or some other neutral monist model, or whatever you want to say. And you can compare, and you had mentioned one thing that apparently is a virtue in your epistemology. You had mentioned parsimony. You had claimed that God was the most parsimonious explanation. Is that one of the reasons that you lean towards the theist model, because you feel it's more parsimonious than the others?
I think it is a good argument for the theistic worldview because you do not have to resort, for example, to multiverses in order to explain fine tuning.
Right, right. So there's other models that are parsimonious. They don't entail, you know, an infinite amount of universes and things like that. It's actually on ground with theism, I would think. You've got something grounded in Platonic forms, you know, Platonism or some form of Platonism. You have idealism or neutral monism, where you can ground reality in consciousness itself, or a field of possibilities within the mind-like structure of the universe. You get all the things that you were talking about explaining away, like the intelligence, complexity in the universe, and rationality. The fact that we can make sense of the universe means that, you know, we're modulating with nature somehow through consciousness. And so there's a link in that way without theism. So have you ever thought that there are alternative models that are just as valid?
Yes, of course, Scott. I have thought about these things, and I mean, these are wide philosophical discussions and questions and so forth. And there are, as you said, various different possible models and worldviews. Absolutely. What I do is I make basically a cumulative argument for the God of the Bible, you know, which starts with the basic question: does God exist? Does he not exist? What is more likely? Okay, it is more likely that an intelligent, powerful creator, which is eternal, exists. So let's start from there. So who is he? And then you go to the nitty-gritty of different religions, and eventually you get to Christianity.
But how did you get from God to the Bible?
Well, one method would be to exclude other belief systems like pantheism, like Hinduism, idealism, and so forth. And eventually you arrive at a definition of God, which then points to one of the three monotheistic world religions, which is Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And then you can filter out these three, and eventually you get to Christianity.
So it's just based on picking and choosing among the created religions. I think, isn't that called the fallacy of comparison? It's like the logical error that you're going to find the truth by picking the best story out of like a limited set of stories.
Of course, we can discuss what would be the best methodology to come to the best explanation, right? By this, I mean intelligent design and creationism just brings you to a general intelligent, powerful creator, but not to its identity. And from there on, to come to the final answer, who is it? You have to investigate and compare the different religions.
How do you address all the Bible contradictions?
Well, I think that one good method is really to check if these are indeed contradictions, or how can we best explain them, you know.
So how would you define a contradiction?
Well, when two facts are portrayed in the opposite way, I mean, if I say this is blue and someone else says no, it's white, so there is a contradiction.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is, people oftentimes excuse a lot of things maybe that you could point out and say, well, that's not really a contradiction in the way that I use the term. So I just wanted to make sure, because I wanted to run, the scripture that always gets me is, like in Exodus 32:14, Yahweh had promised or had told Moses that he was going to wipe out the Israelites. But then later on in 32:14, says, so the Lord relented and changed his mind from bringing destruction to his people. But then, we have the scripture that says that God is not a man that he should change his mind. He's omniscient. So how do you deal with contradictions like that? They seem to fit the definition of contradiction that you gave.
Yeah, I think that the best way to deal with this is just to study what is actually in the original text, what is the meaning of these words in the original language, and trying to understand better, and eventually some supposed contradictions they disappear. A nice example is when the Bible says that God would bring punishment upon the few different generations, and elsewhere it says, well, the sin of the fathers should not be paid by their sons. So these appear to be contradicting statements, but when you actually understand what is meant by that, then you understand that these people back then, they lived usually all the family together, so the grandfathers and the father and the son and the grandson, so there were different generations which lived together, and when there was some kind of punishment,
right, and I don't deny that there's times when some things people point out as a contradiction aren't necessarily a contradiction, or could just be a different perspective on the same event retold by somebody else. I get it. But in this case, in every translation of the Bible, where it talks about God will not change his mind, that is the definite point that he makes, that God cannot change his mind. He's not a mortal man that he can change his mind. And then we have all these different examples of God changing his mind. So either God knows something's the case or he doesn't. If he knows that he's going to destroy the Israelites, he knew he wouldn't change his mind. It seems to me, if you're all knowing, that's what that means, that you know all things. And so it makes sense that God couldn't change his mind because he knows everything. So then we have so many different verses that God either changed his mind or repented of that he created man, and all of these things,
There's at least 350 verified contradictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the point is that I think is important is that Atangelo, like, you should pick one or the other. Either he can change his mind or
Right.
he can't. All right. Either way is you're at least taking a position. All right. You know, there are people, Christians, that say, yeah, God can change his mind. And there are Christians that say he can't. All right. But you're trying to sit in the middle of an obvious contradiction. You're sitting right in the middle. I don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, let's suppose that there are indeed these contradictions and they are true contradictions. The question is, where do we go from there? Let's presuppose that you have a case and these contradictions are real and they exist. What do we do by this? Do we simply say, well, the Bible isn't true because these contradictions exist? Do we make the inference this is all made up and the authors, they didn't even realize that they were telling contradictions? What do you, I mean,
Or God lied.
Is it
God
warranted
sent a
to make
delusion.
the inference, okay, there are these contradictions in the Bible, therefore it's all bullshit?
No, I don't think you have to go all the way with that. I think that you should recognize that there are contradictions. I mean, what's wrong with doing that? You can't recognize that.
I have no problem in admitting when I come to a point where I have to admit, okay, I mean, I cannot give an answer to that. And there are things which indeed I cannot give an answer, like the day when in Joshua where they stand still for 24, it became a day of 48 hours. And there have been some kind of attempts to explain this astronomically. And I think that all these attempts, they are not convincing. So what should I do with that?
Well,
I mean,
are you prepared? Because you're here, all right? Are you prepared to say, yes, the Bible does have contradictions?
well, I wouldn't say that in a categorical way and in a definitive way, because I would prefer to say, let me check it out and see what the answers are in the specific cases and see if I find an answer which is, at least to me, satisfying, or if there is not. But I think there is more on that. We are talking about a Bible which is made of 66 different books in a time period of
But
1500
why
years.
should we assume that going into answering the question? Why should we assume, oh, there's going to be a rational answer for that? I'm sure there will. Why do we make that assumption? Why not just follow the evidence where it leads you instead of just
maybe
presupposing?
rather than making a conclusion, just leave it
Right,
open
you don't want
in
to
the
make a
air
conclusion
as an
either
open
way.
question. I mean, the question is this giving you warrant to question the Bible in its entire
Why not?
what
Yeah,
it
why-
says, and say it's
Literally,
all
why not,
true?
Angelo? It obviously is a problem. Now you could ignore the problem, but the Bible does have contradictions. So if you admit that, then you're at one step closer to understanding the skeptical mind.
Right, like
Because
how
we
many
go by
contradictions
logic. We
does it
don't go
take?
by belief.
Well, what I do not understand, and I'm being very honest with you on that, Lou, is that you don't seem to see the scientific unwarrantedness to believe that the universe can be eternal. And I mean, this is just the point, the top of the iceberg. There are
Yeah.
so many phenomena in the natural world which do not warrant that they could come and exist without an intelligent, powerful creator.
Well,
Nonetheless,
Angelo.
you have to stick to that worldview because you are an atheist.
No, I
and that
don't.
makes no sense to me.
No, here's the difference, Angelo. And there really is a difference. Okay. The difference is I don't have to stick with one thing. I can go wherever the evidence leads me. I told you I believe that the universe is eternal, that it's infinite. I didn't say I know that and that I'm going to place, all of my life's work on that. because I recognize there are things that we simply don't know right now. Right? But when I talk to people, they seem to insist they know things that they simply don't know.
Well, I go by inference to the best explanation, Lou. And to me, eternal universe isn't the best explanation. To me, it makes much more sense to believe that there is an eternal, powerful, intelligent creator which did set up this universe with specific purpose in mind, which fine-tuned it, which created life, which created biodiversity, which fine-tuned everything. And all the evidence, the scientific evidence, points to that direction. So
So, Tangelo, let me ask you, are you therefore a dualist?
well, I am a dualist because I think that in substance, the mind is different than the physical.
So how does the mind interact with the physical?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's the interaction problem. But Dark Light Delirium is a theist, but he's a non-dualist. So maybe he has a better explanation to kind of solve that interaction problem. I don't know.
Well, I've been holding on to a question for about 20 minutes, and this is circling back around to the proposition that you set up, to where it's either theism or atheism. That is a false equivalency fallacy that is predicated upon a God of the gaps fallacy, which is saying that I can only conceive of one of two paths, therefore that's all there is. So that's saying that just because I can't conceive of another path, that doesn't mean that there is another path. You know, I've been holding on to that one for a while. And also circling back around to another point you made earlier, where you were saying, because I'm theist, I'm a non-Abrahamic true monotheist, and you were saying earlier that how you came to the Christian God is by a process of elimination, essentially, by which you concluded that there are only three major ones that you really need to consider, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And that brings me back to my previous point, where that's kind of a God of the gaps situation as well, because just because you can only conceive of three possibilities in which monotheism exists doesn't mean that there's not another possibility. And I'm a prime example of that, because my perception is entirely a whole nother path of monotheism. So those are just some points.
Interrupt you. I didn't say there are just these three versions of monotheism. Okay. And as you just confirmed, there are other expressions, and I acknowledge this.
So Christianity just won out.
Yeah. You picked one, Tangelo.
Well, I mean, this would be an entire different theological question. Was it God that picked me, or was it me that picked Christ? You know,
right? From the founding of the world. How would you know? Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I had another point that I wanted to bring up, and it was kind of a parallel to the story that you brought up earlier. You said you were 15 or 16 and feeling kind of suicidal, and that kind of led you to the Christian God, essentially, right?
Well, that was the trigger that made me ask, how do I get out of my depression? That was basically the trigger. And since I was younger and I was praying before going to sleep, and I felt that prayer worked, I said, well, let me try it out again.
So I was suicidal. I was very depressed and suicidal most of my life till I was 30. And I was kind of in a similar situation, but what stopped me from, it pretty much cured my depression and my suicidal tendencies, is just the realization that I am God, and I have the power to control my world. I am a co-creator within the Godhood, because just real quick, my perception is that we are all an extension of the Godhood. God is living through our lives. That is why he is the eternal living God. How can he be the eternal living God but separate from our life? The only way he could be the eternal living God is if he is intricately intertwined to all life. All life and all death is his life and his death. So anyway, I just realized that we are all creators creating our own worlds, and with that comes the security and the power of knowing, okay, if there's something in my world that I don't like, I can change it and make a better world for myself. And so I just kind of saw a parallel right there, but where you went towards Christianity, I just totally went in a totally divergent direction.
He's like Neo in the Matrix, man.
And
He woke up.
Tangelo, it's very important, I think, to recognize that people do go in different directions, and for very good reasons. And it could just be a reason that's, important to them, like you. I mean, you went in a direction because you felt something was important to you. Well, you know that the world is not filled with Jews and Christians. You know there's other people who believe different things. And do you accept that other people have good reasons to believe what they believe? Or is it only your belief that has good reason?
Well, that would be the question, what are good reasons, right? I mean, I completely understand that for a Buddhist, he has probably good reasons to be a Buddhist, in as much as a Jew or a Catholic or whatever it is. Nobody holds strongly and special to a belief without having good reasons, right? So all I can say is, I just respect it. I can confess why I think I have good reasons to believe that Christ is my Lord, and whatever you, Lou, or Scott, or whoever makes out of my confession, that's up to them, and I fully respect it.
But do you think it's a fair thing for a God of any sort to judge a human being based on what they believe?
Well, I believe that God knows best how to judge us, right? So I don't think that I am as intelligent as he is, and I fully trust in his sense of justice and how he will judge each one of us.
Well, I'm God in drag right now, and I judge that all you guys are awesome.
Tangelo, the thing is, there's something very important, and I think you recognize it, but you just go around it because you don't want to really address the ramifications of it. And that is that people, human beings, do believe different things. All right. That's absolutely a fact, and you're aware of that. But you're comfortable with a God who would judge a person based on what they believe. And that's not justice. That makes no sense.
Well, you need to bring it up to him, not to me. If you think that.
But I don't believe God would be that petty. I mean, if what I believe makes him that sad, it seems like I'm really the one in control here.
Yeah. That's how I see it, Tangelo. It's like because I believe something, right? I happen to believe something. He doesn't like what I believe, but he says, I'm giving you free will, and I'm making up my mind the best I can. And the Christian God is upset with me.
Yeah, many of these Christians, they make God out to be like an abusive husband.
I mean, I would say something completely different. I would say, Lou, God loves you enormously. You don't even know, and you don't even fathom how much God loves you.
Does he love me? Does he love me even though I don't believe in him?
Absolutely.
Okay, then why? So I'm going to go into heaven, right? Because he loves me, even though
No,
I don't believe in him.
you're bringing yourself to hell.
I mean, it's
I don't,
Angela.
I don't,
Why?
I don't
Why would
think
he?
that you expect
Why,
me
if
now
he
to tell
loves
you
me?
something that you don't already know, right?
Okay, why, if he loves me, would he send me to a bad place because I don't believe in him? Why would a loving person do that?
Well, the thing is that God is not only loving, he's also just.
So he's bad too, right?
Now, being just doesn't mean to be bad. Being
He's
just
giving you what you
is
deserve.
is being correct. And I mean, his love is expressed by the fact that he pays for your wrongdoings through Christ on the cross. So you don't have to pay. You know that. I mean, I don't have to tell you new things. You have gone through all this, and you made your decisions. I mean, what should I say?
No, it's not quite like you're portraying. All right, I make decisions based on the evidence that I see and my cognitive ability to make decisions. And you're saying, I mean, ultimately, the Bible or the Christian idea of this Bible is saying that God is not happy with me because he will send me to a very bad place. And he's going to do that based on what I believe. And what I'm saying to you is that's not a good God.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as I said, tell it God when time comes, and see what he will answer you.
You're still going to hell.
I got to ask you one thing, Angelo, and this is personal because we've talked many times. All right. Would you send me to hell because I don't believe something that you do?
I am not God, Lou.
I know. I'm saying, if would you do that?
If you were God,
Yeah,
you as a person, if you were God, would you make that choice to send Lou to hell for not believing in the Christian Bible? I think is what he's getting at.
yeah.
Yeah.
Would you do that? That's what I'm asking.
Well, I first of all, I've never thought about this. I mean, how would I construct the best possible world? That is a very interesting but also complex question, and I think many philosophers have, like Leibniz and so forth, they have thought about this. Did God create the best possible world? And my answer today is I absolutely think yes, he did create the best possible world.
Okay,
And this
but
includes
Angelo,
his plan of salvation. And he has set up that um, if you believe that Christ paid for your sins, you'll be saved. And I
okay.
think this is God's plan of salvation, and it's the best plan, and he paid a very high price to put it in practice.
Well, it's a good way to evade a question. Because all I did was ask you a direct question about what you would do. And I know it's not you can do it. I'm just saying if you had the ability to do it, and you didn't answer. Now I'm going
Okay,
to answer.
so let me
I'm
be
going to
clear.
answer.
If I would be God, and I would judge your life, Lou, I would say, okay, let's put the life of Lou on the table to see what he did. And then I would put all the sins that you committed on the table and see, oh, you did this wrong, and this wrong, and this wrong. So this deserves a punishment. And go
Well,
from
why
there.
are you pretending to be God? That's blasphemy.
Hey, Angelo, I'm going to answer for me based on you. Okay. If I were a God, I would not put you in a bad place because you believe in something. And I wouldn't put you in a bad place even if I was Allah, the Muslim God. I wouldn't say, oh, Atangelo got it wrong, therefore I'm going to put him in a very bad place. So I answer the question directly. So that's my answer. No, I would not put you in a bad place because you believe something erroneously.
Yeah, I don't think that God will just put you in a bad place exclusively because of beliefs, but He will weigh your actions as well. What did you do in your life? You know.
Yeah, but you're copping out. Come on, be real with me. All right, God of the Bible. All right, He will put me in a good place as long as I believe in Him. You're denying that?
Well, He will save me because I believe and I accept for myself that Christ paid on the cross for my sins. I received this gift and the offered grace. I
Right.
want
And I'm
that
not
for me.
and I'm
And
not getting that gift.
And if you don't want that, then God will respect your will.
Oh, I
He will
want
not-
it.
He will
No,
not
no, no.
put
My
you
boss
into
says,
heaven
I will
against
respect
your
your
will,
wish.
Lou.
Listen, I want to go to heaven, Angela. Okay, but I do not believe in the God. So don't cop out and say, "Well, you're the one." No, it's not me.
Well,
There's
then you
a
shouldn't
God
believe
who's
in
doing
heaven
it.
either, right? Because if there is no God of the Bible, then all is not true. The heaven doesn't exist, hell doesn't exist, the afterlife doesn't exist. Anything that is written in the Bible, uh, it's all fantasy. It doesn't exist. So why even care? I mean,
Because
if
it's
I would be an atheist,
The Christian
you
proposition
know,
of
the
after
thing is, I really don't understand people which dedicate their life to deny something, you know.
I don't dedicate my life to deny something. All right, I dedicate my life in the pursuit of truth and to understand the best I can what is real and what is not real. And ultimately, according to Christian theology, I'm not going to go to the good place. All right, you are, and you're going to go there based on what you believe. And I'm not going to the good place because I don't believe it. And somehow you make justice out of it. That's not justice.
I mean, Lou, why do you even care if it's all not true?
I don't.
He's
I really,
But it seems
yes,
you do because
I
you are
don't care.
asking questions about my belief, and you just a few minutes ago you said, well, we should respect what others believe, but it seems that you are uncomfortable with my belief in the God of the Bible, and
No, I'm really not. I mean, if I was, I would tell you that. I'm not. I really honestly think that people can think for themselves and decide what they believe. Okay. And I have no problem with you, Atangelo. All right. I don't have a problem with what you believe. I just want you to understand it is just a belief. That's it.
well, it is just a belief, but that belief is very fundamental for many different decisions that I make in my life.
No. I mean, you're free to believe whatever you want. And I'm free to believe what I want. All right.
Yeah.
Or what I think makes sense. And you're free to use your mind to make sense of it all. Right? I'm criticizing the theology that says that I'm going to go to a bad place because I don't believe what you do. That's a very bad theology.
I mean, you can criticize it as much as you like, Lou. Why should I care about your criticism? I really don't.
I mean,
honestly, he's not criticizing it. He's acknowledging that it criticizes anyone that doesn't capitulate to it. That's kind of gaslighting.
You know what I really would expect from someone that thinks he has a superior case to Christianity is to defend his own worldview. And this is something which I almost never see atheists do, you know. And that's why I always say, well, the burden of proof is not only on us. If you want to have a dialogue with a theist, then the burden of proof is on both sides. And honestly, Lou, you don't have good cards in your hands, because claiming that the universe can always have existed, that's simply not rational to believe. And the evidence doesn't point to that direction. So that's why I'm unconvinced that you have a case.
Tangelo, I didn't make that claim. I said it's what I believe.
Well, but it's empty.
I didn't say I know that to be a
Well,
fact.
it's not about dichotomy knowing or believing. It is that this is the alternative belief that you need to hold to when you deny the existence of an eternal powerful, intelligent creator. And that alternative simply makes, rationally speaking, no sense to me. It isn't logical, it isn't rational, it's not evidence-based, it's just a placeholder because you don't want to believe in the theistic worldview. And
There's other models.
I think this is
There are
There's
some
models on the table.
this is a rational. It's not rational.
Earlier in
Rule out.
earlier in the conversation, you cited the law of thermodynamics as a reason as to why you believe in your particular model. But I have another law, the law of conservation of energy, which would support Lou's proposition of an eternal universe. That is the law of conservation of energy. Energy is not created or destroyed. It always is. And if you cite the law of thermodynamics, then you must equally lend credence to all scientific laws. If you're citing scientific laws that support your theory, you must consider other scientific laws. And when you're saying that Lou's proposition of an eternal universe doesn't make any sense, you are not taking into account the law of conservation of energy, which would actually support Lou's proposition of an eternal universe. Because I'm a theist and I also believe in an eternal universe. I don't believe that universe had one particular start. I believe it had a near infinite amount of starts for different universes.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily a theist, but I'm sort of on board with Darklight. I think that the universe was eternal. It was just a field. Maybe what we see as the observable universe is more like a projection of a deeper reality, which is going to be a field of possibility, probability, sort of mind light, which would explain the hard problem of consciousness, could easily be coherent with the holographic principle, even some of the things that Roger Penrose talked about, the eternal cycle of the universe. All of these things are coherent with each other. And so it's just as good as a model such as theism. There's different models on the table, some which include God, some which don't. And we're just being arbitrary. We're trying to use what models solve the problems we like to solve, But like you, I also see the complexity, the seeming design of the universe, and wonder, how did all this stuff get here? Why is there so much intelligence? Why is it even intelligible to us? All of these questions are the same things to kind of gap fill in God.
Your sound is horrible.
I don't want to gap fill it. I just want to build on what we already know exists, which is our universe, consciousness, all of this stuff exists. So that's all you really.
Your sound is going in and out, Scott.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tangelo, to be clear, okay, I don't know how all things came into existence. Do you know how all things came into existence?
Lou, when we are talking about worldviews, then we cannot talk about proofs and knowing in absolute sense. All we can do is trying to find out what the best explanation is. We inference to the best explanation.
Right.
So, I cannot just say this. Here is the evidence. To me, it points to a powerful intelligent creator. I think that's the best explanation. Can I prove it? No, I can't, because I have no access to alternate reality, to what exists or does not exist eventually beyond this physical universe. So, no, I can't give you absolute answers.
Is there anyone who's got the distortion thing going on? I don't know. I mean, I don't think I do.
Check 1, 2. Oh yeah, it went away.
You sound good, Lou. Scott, you sounded better with your mic up close.
All right, yeah, that's a lot better.
It's still got distortion, but I mean, Tangelo, I appreciate you coming in. I always do.
Well,
Right.
I got one more question for Tangelo. I got a question for you, man. If you're ready,
Let me just quick answer to your point, which you said, that energy cannot be destroyed or created. That's the first law of thermodynamics. This is a misunderstanding which very often is done by who claims that the universe could be eternal. The thing is that these physical laws, they just apply in our universe. They do not apply beyond the physical universe. Okay, and
well, you use the scientific laws
you still need to account for the fact that the second law of thermodynamics has never been broken. If you put water to boil and you leave it and stop the hot, it will become cold. That's always the direction that we observe. And the fact is that this is something which is universally accepted, that energy loses over time its capacity to perform work. This has never been broken. And when you claim otherwise, then you go away from observation of rationality to blind rational belief. That's what you are expressing.
Did you just say that the law of conservation of energy isn't real or something? Like,
no,
It's
I
more
don't
close
say that. The law is very well applicable in our universe, inasmuch as the second law of thermodynamics, which says that entropy goes to low from high entropy, and there will be a state where all energy to perform work will be used, and then we will be in a universe of thermodynamic equilibrium, where the universe cannot perform any work anymore, and the universe will be essentially dead. That means
So God is outside of the universe, right?
that means that the universe could not have been eternal in the past, because otherwise we would already be in a dead universe and not have this conversation.
Hey,
Well,
is someone using a mouse? Someone suggested that distortion is a mouse running around, mouse.
well, that's not the only solution though, because there could have been an infinite amount of Big Bangs, and we are just right now in one of infinite or near infinite Big Bangs. There could have been infinite Big Bangs, but that's not the question I wanted to ask. The question I wanted to ask is, can you forgive someone without blood? You personally, can you forgive someone, Otangelo?
Yes, of course.
So you have more power than this God. If you
Well,
can
I mean, maybe you don't know, but
then the
there
God
has been cases in the Old Testament where the forgiveness was given without giving a blood sacrifice. Okay, so there are these cases in the Old Testament. So,
Jesus.
yeah, so the in Hebrews, where it says there is no forgiveness without blood, this is something which you need to study what it actually means, because of that. there are cases in the Old Testament where you could give an offer without involving blood and have forgiveness for certain things.
Well, it is my position that Yahweh, Jesus, and Allah are desert war gods of hypocrisy. So I'm aware that the Old Testament calls for blood as part of forgiveness as well, but this is also Yahweh is not the one true creator either, because an all powerful God would not need blood in order to forgive. Like as you just stated, and me too, to personalize it, I don't need to shed blood in order to forgive. I can just forgive.
Yeah. You know,
And
the thing is that I see myself in the place where I think I am, and I think I am not in a position to dictate or to tell godly things. I could do godly things better than as God has determined them. So I think this is a very arrogant position to think that you are in the place to criticize God for how He has decided that the way that
Hey.
He has determined to forgive.
let me ask. I don't know, but someone was suggesting that someone is using a mouse and that's creating the noise in the stream. I don't know if that's the case, but
Scott, can you close your mic to see if that sound goes on?
what's that? Like right now,
It continues.
right? Atangelo, I got one last thing to say to you today. Okay, you can believe that a God needs people to suffer and bleed blood in order to forgive them. But I must say that to me is one of the most horrendous ideas about the God. That the God would need to see blood, to smell blood in order to forgive someone. Because I'm telling you, I forgive people all the time. I don't need to sacrifice my son. I don't need to create a bloody mess. None of that. And God, like Dark Light is saying, if God requires that he must see blood and he must smell blood, that's a very odd God. That's my last statement.
That God makes me sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
All I can
That's
say
a
is
depressing Angelo. That's a very depressing God.
you know, Lou, all I can say is this: that I know that my God is enormously loving, and that He has prepared eternal life for those who love Him and received Christ's offer of forgiveness through what He did on the cross. It wasn't somebody external; it was God Himself, which came and sacrificed Him in Jesus Christ, the second person of God. He did give His life freely. Nobody took it from Him. He decided this plan of salvation, and I'm immensely thankful because I believe that my life, I exist because He created me in the ultimate sense. It wasn't just my parents, but He created the first human being, which we are descendant from, and He offers us eternal life and has done everything to make this possible because I cannot save myself. So I think that the more I think about this, the more I am just grateful because I am not more than a poor sinner. I don't see myself as part of God in my nature. I am just a creature which is a fallen creature and which needs of grace, forgiveness, and salvation. I worship it thankfully.
One last question, Atangelo, then I'm going to cut the stream because the noise is unbearable. But one last thing, right? Would you? I like to put it personally, right? And I'll answer the same question. But would you require your son to be killed in order to forgive somebody?
Yeah, these are difficult questions, but I say it again. There is no parallel because Jesus is God himself. So I don't think this is a good illustration or parallel to what actually happened through Christ's offer and sacrifice.
Well, but God did require his son to be brutally tortured. Is that correct?
Well, what did Christ himself say? He said, nobody took my life. I gave it freely. So he decided to incarnate in the full concordance with the Father's will. It was also his will because he said, I and the Father, we are one. So, so he gave his life freely because he understood that he had to go through this in order to offer salvation and pay the price for human sin. So, your question is well put because it wasn't something that God the Father demanded and the Son, against his will, he accepted to go through this. But the will of the Son and the Father are the same.
Okay, one last thing, Tangelo. First off, I'm going to answer the same question I asked you. No, I would not require my son to be killed in order to forgive you or anybody else. And that would be the same answer even if my son said, yes, I want to go get killed and be tortured. Doesn't matter if the son wanted to do it. It's just not a good thing. It's a very depressing and pathetic God that would have his own son tortured and shed blood so that he could be somehow appeased and forgive you or me. So that's my answer.
Yeah.
But anyway, we better end this because it's just crazy with the sound, and I got to get a new mic. Maybe possible. It's my mic. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you always coming in. Appreciate the conversation. And
Angelo, I appreciate the honesty from your side, man.
oh yeah, Tangelo. I always talk good about Tangelo. So always know that, and appreciate everyone coming by. And next time we'll talk about something else. So enjoy the night, and thank you for everyone who stopped by. Like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff.
All right, good
Have
night,
a good
everyone.
night.
All right.
Night.
Good night.